Testing. Okay, everyone ready? Okay, we'll get started. Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Virginia City Council chambers. This is a regularly scheduled committee of the whole meeting. We'll call this meeting to order. Today's date is Tuesday, January 2nd, 2024. The time is 9:05 a.m. Just Happy New Year to everyone. We start the new year with some significant challenges moving forward, and the committee of the whole meeting is the kickoff meeting for that. We're going to deviate from the meeting real quickly and have an opportunity to have a little photo op. Just to give you a quick background, we have in the audience Sarah Sepla, the secretary or treasurer of the Friends of Public Safety, along with Rocky and Carol Lucarelli, or Rocky being the president of that, and Jan Makowski, a member of the Friends of Public Safety. And over the last couple of years, there's a group of people that come up from this Twin Cities, Michael Jarek and a bunch of group of people come up, and they play this big, huge golf tournament every year. And for the last 2 years, they have collected a lot of money to disperse to various different entities. And they've chose the Friends of Public Safety the last 2 years in which to do so. This is the third year, and once again, they've chosen the Friends of Public Safety as a donation to the public safety of the city of Virginia. And so on behalf of the Fishnote Golf Tournament, Michael Jarek and Fairway Customs Homes and all the people that are involved in this project, all the business owners, we would like to present a check, and we'll have a photo op here. And they've asked me to present this check because they couldn't come up today. And so on behalf of the council, on behalf of all of us, we're going to present this check to Friends of Public Safety in the amount of $3,240 from the Fishnote Golf Tournament. So please come forward, Rocky and Sarah and Jan and Carol, come on forward, and we'll have a little photo opportunity, and I'll present the check to the president, and we'll go from there. Rocky. Half of the Fishnote Golf Tournament, Michael $1,240. Happy New Year. Okay, thank you everybody for your patience, and we'll move on the regularly scheduled meeting agenda appearances, and I'll turn this committee meeting over to our city administrator, Britt C. Bennis. Britt?
Thank you. Item number 1 on the agenda is Matt Reed from SDH, our city engineer of record, regarding requests for approval of some authorizations and to advertise for bids.
Morning, Matt.
Good morning. We're going to, there's 3 items or 3 projects that we were going to ask for authorization to advertise for bids today, but we are going to end up postponing A and B, I believe, the 6th and 17th and the 10th and 13th. Britt received some information late last week regarding the time that has elapsed from the time when we originally did the public hearings to when we're actually bidding the projects. And so we're going to have to take a step back and make sure we follow the state statutes accordingly, and do another public hearing for those. And so those projects have just been, we've been trying to, get easements and things like that, and approvals from the state, and it's just taken longer than what the original time frame was expected to be. So we're gonna, I don't know if if tabling it or postponing it, whatever, A and B would be the appropriate thing to do, Britt?
In a perfect world, at the council meeting next week, it would be wise of us to adopt a resolution approving the feasibility report again, and then ordering a public hearing for those A and B again, one more time, just to keep you on that bidding time frame, so we do get some, hopefully, good prices and get those bids out by February, if we can't get them done in January here. So.
Yes. Okay. So I think that is important, that we want to try to, from the standpoint of, as Britt indicated, making sure that we still get in that good bidding climate. We really want to try to get these things out for bids as soon as we possibly can. So yes, that sounds like a good idea. We'll work on updating the feasibility study and go from there. The third one, though, Silver Lake Trail, that one, if the council is so inclined, we could move ahead with that one. That doesn't have assessments on it. That's funded by LCCMR. And if we could get that one out for bids this week yet, we could roll with that. So I'll answer any questions you might have on that one.
Okay, first and foremost, item A and B, before we go to the council for additional discussion and questions. So the motion you're requesting for A and B is what, Britt?
Committee of the whole, we will need a resolution. I'm sorry, at the council meeting on next Tuesday, we need a resolution to initiate the process, approve the public hearing notices, and call for public hearing.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt, thank you. I was here for a little bit of your meeting, but I didn't listen in completely. In the letter from Freiberger, from Mia Thibodeau, on item number 1, recommended next steps is to obtain a letter who did the feasibility study to determine whether a new study is needed or if the old study can still be used. And if we need to do a new feasibility study, what is the expense going to be on that?
There'll be a little bit, but the materially, the feasibility study won't change. We'll update the costs. So all the tables and everything are there. It'll be a matter of going through and just updating those costs, and that'll ultimately update it's all linked together. It'll update the assessment policy and then assessment worksheets, and then we'll reassemble the feasibility report. So yeah, there'll be a little bit of I don't know off the top of my head, but it won't be a lot. Nominal, yes. Okay. It won't be much.
Okay, and then the reason for the action to do a new resolution for a new public hearing and notices is because we did not hit the 1-year timeline according to the state statute for the bond requirement. Is that correct?
Right, correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. Anyone else?
I'll make a motion to authorize the review of the feasibility study. And what was the second half of that? I forgot already.
Resolution calling for a public hearing.
Calling for the public hearings.
Okay, thank you. Motion by Councilor Friedlieb. Is there support?
Support for discussion.
Support by Councilor Motley for discussion. Further discussion, Councilor Motley.
Brett, were you okay with that motion and how it's read out?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Motley. It has been moved and supported. Further discussion, Britt?
Mayor, we did talk about in the street and alley meeting, which was right before this meeting, that we will also try to get that assessment policy exhibit updated before this, because that was part of since the public hearings were held with the old policy, we had to follow that old policy. But if we can get the new policy in place before the public hearing, we can get people on the new policy for those also. And we have changed, we did vote to change the 20%. We changed the assessment policy to some degree, but the other part is how we mete it out. So there'll be a new schedule on how the design on who gets assessed, and that'll come a recommendation from Mr. Chair and Councilor Motley as well to the City Council for consideration. Thank you. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Friedlieb.
So we elapsed the time necessary for the grant funding, and that was primarily because we were unable to obtain the easements that were necessary. Have those been now concluded?
Correct. The easements have all been in.
Yeah, except with the exception of one, we just adjusted the scope a little bit on the 17th Street project. We were missing one, and we did adjust the scope to accommodate that. We'll pick up. So we were going to put a median in on 12th Avenue. This has been discussions quite some time ago, but we were going to put a median in to improve those turn lanes on right by Super One and KFC. We don't have the one easement necessary to be able to do that right now, so we're gonna pull out that portion of the project and move it to another. It'll hopefully be part of the 14th, 20th Southern Drive in the following year. We'll get that in there. But in order to move this ahead and get the funding spent that we have, the grant money spent, we just decided to pull that out and move ahead with it and continue to move forward on trying to secure that last easement.
And this motion will expedite that process.
It'll allow the process to happen. It won't necessarily expedite it. It's got to happen. To meet state statute, we have to redo the process. It'll expedite it in the sense that if we put it off, continue to put it off, it'll take longer, but it's gonna, I guess, it's gonna go as fast as it's gonna go at this point, so.
Thank you,
yeah.
Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Freely. Thank you, Matt. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Item C?
Yeah, and so item C is the Silver Lake Trail, Phase 3. And that one does not have any special assessments, and so no process to follow. So if you're so inclined to move that one ahead, we can move ahead with that one right now.
And it's
that one advertised.
And it's LCCMR funded.
LCCMR funded.
Thank you.
I'll make the motion to move it forward.
Councilor Motley makes a motion to move it forward. Is there support? By Councilor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Anything else for Matt down the list? Thank you, Matt.
Item number 2 is Dominic Olavanti from AOA to discuss his request for a temporary closure of 2 roads in order to shoot a commercial on January 13th, 2024.
Mr. Olavanti, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor, Council, and Administrator C. Bennis. Thank you so much for having me here today. Yes, I stand on behalf of AUA and Arrowhead Transit. We have an exciting marketing opportunity to invest in a commercial in the Super Bowl for 2024. We're a little behind the ball on shooting that, and we have 3 proposed shooting locations for this commercial, one being in Mountain Iron, of which I will address them later, and then 2 being here in the city of Virginia. The first location proposed is by Tennis for All, and it'd be the 1200 and the 1300 block that we would need use of for 4 hours on January 13th from noon to 4. And then additionally, a portion of Southern Drive from the Mesabi Humane Society to the northernmost point where the houses meet. And there's no houses on that portion of the block. So we need both of those locations and then the additional one that we have in Mount Iron to complete the shooting process of this commercial.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Olavanti. Questions? We had a few at the last meeting, so we'll start left to right. First, Councilor Paulson, and then over to Councilor Motley. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dominic, for being here, and this is exciting for you guys. That's awesome. I did have a question because I want to make sure that people that are members of the Tennis for All building have access to that. So you're saying 12th and 5th or 11th and 5th?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
we will have the 12, or what we were requesting was the 1200 and the 1300 block of Fifth Avenue. So that would be along the length of that empty green space just north of the Tennis for All building.
So like on the dirt road on the back road there?
No, the actual Fifth Avenue where I want the globe lights.
What?
I want the globe lights in the shot would be my personal goal of that shot.
So would users of the facility be able to park along 5th, just north of that, like 5th and 11th?
Yeah, yep, that would be like, yeah, for the couple hours that we would need it, if that's at all possible, that would be great. We will still shoot there if it's amenable to the council and we can't block it off, but it's so much more helpful to have that blocked off so that we can have
I want to
ample
just have
access.
people to have access.
Of course.
They do use that facility for pickleball and all sorts of things. So I'm okay as long as there's access, if there will be.
Certainly, and we can work with whomever, Public Works, to make sure that there's ample access and that we're not in anybody's way during that shot. Of course.
Thank you, Mayor.
Of course.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. Councilor Motley.
Also, thank you. This is very exciting.
Yeah.
I know Brian from our Parks and Rec had some concerns about this. Have you had a chance, or has city staff talked to you at all about, have you talked to Brian about blocking off this area by what we're chatting about right now? Or has he talked to you at all, Brian Silver?
So I haven't specifically spoken to Brian Silver, but I did speak with City Administrator C. Venice about this project specifically and the implications and just what we would need that space for the couple hours that we would be there.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mayor.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Looking for a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve for further discussion as well.
Motion by Councilor Freely to move forward with, for further discussion. There's a support. Support by Councilor Beyondich. Further discussion. I'm just going to get it out of the way. It's 4 hours or so out of a 365-day, 24-hour period for a Super Bowl commercial I mean, I don't see a problem if you can arrange access. I mean, it's minimal for such an opportunity that we have. So thank you, Councilor Freely.
I just so Mr. Rosfit, your crew would be responsible at least in putting up a barricade of some sort to divert traffic, so there would still be access to the areas of town where traffic normally flows in there?
Coming up, Jim, if you would please, and address the microphone. Thank you, so the people at home can listen. Thank you. Jim Rosvit, our Public Works Director. Jim?
Morning. Would you be looking at shooting from the south, say the park side, looking north, or would you be looking from shooting from the north, looking to the south?
Sure. So this will be decided by our creative team. They'll fly up from Rochester to shoot this for us. That's where our creative team is based out of, and they'll make those creative decisions. Of course, we're not going to get houses in the shot. We're not going to get people's vehicles if they're accidentally left there in the shot. We're not going to get stuff like that. The only reason I want to shoot at that specific location is just to make sure we get the globes so that people who are from the city of Virginia can look at this commercial and be like, wow, I know exactly where that is. And potentially then the Tennis for All building in the background, just because that's another fixture in the community. So those will be the shots in the background.
I believe we could accommodate where we do have access on the backside now also from the ball fields. Being that it's winter, it's frozen, you could access from that point and come around to the backside if some of the elderly people might want to get in there. And if it's a 4-hour period, we would block off the alleys and those couple streets, that's 12th and 13th, I think. We'd have to block off from the west, but I don't see there being a problem on our part. Same with that southern drive. They want between the wastewater treatment plant and that new stretch of road, basically, so we could detour the traffic back south at the wastewater treatment plant and the animal shelter for that stretch of period of time.
Thank you.
It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Olivanti.
Mr. Mayor, one more thing.
Yeah, please do.
As a thank you, we will give the usable B-roll and access to those all the photography that we take. Some of it will be bus free, so you'll be able to have some really cool images of the city, drone footage, and all that fun stuff that you'll be able to use for whatever you see fit. So thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Olivanti. Okay, next item, please.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is Taylor Dickinson from IEA regarding the Public Safety Center project abatement and hazardous material removal, and the change order number 2 from Envirobate, and a final pay estimate number 3 from Envirobate that was referred from the council meeting on 12/26.
Okay, Taylor Dickinson from IEA.
Morning, how are you?
Good morning.
I understand there were questions.
Okay. I don't have one, but I think the council does. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so there's 2 items in here, and I'm not sure I'm understanding, I think, either one of them. So the first one, these are just for specific properties in the amount of $6,905.
Yep, change order number 2.
Okay, and so was that part of, I'm not understanding why there's an additional $6,905.
Sure, fair. So the change order number 2, the beginning of it lists the extra work that contractors did. The extra work were things that weren't included in the spec that was bid out to them. The information that we used for the specification given to the contractors for the specific abatement was taken out of the reports that the city had Braun Intertech complete, the inspection reports. The inspection reports were not 100% accurate. So if in their inspection report it indicated 50 feet of pipe insulation, and once we actually get into the house they find 70 feet, we track the contractor's extra work so they can be compensated for the extra work that they did. So those were all the more minimal amounts that were done at different properties that weren't noted in your inspection reports. And then the additional mobilization of $2,000 was due to the resident that did not vacate on time. So they had to remobilize to come back up.
Sure, and I see that I have that actually circled, the mobilization fee or the number there, but we had agreed to pay the change order of the $19,900, which at the time was explained to us that that was for the additional feet that you're describing and any of the additional amounts. So I don't know what the $6,905 is.
Yeah, the original change order of the 19.9 was for an additional property. So what happened is so the Braun reports did not come in a cohesive fashion. They arrived to me in pieces of email, and they didn't include what we would consider to be the entire report. So it was more their summary versus a final report, which would be their exact findings of the property, like listed out specifically. So ceiling tile, mastic, carpet mastic, etc., with the labs attached. Those are not what I received because my understanding was that it was just an expedited process. So I worked with the pieces as we got them. Working with the pieces as we got them, once we are missing several buildings, it's easy to see that there's one building that wasn't in our spec and that we had just been unaware of. And that was because one of the addresses had 2 buildings with one address. And it wasn't like a garage, it was a large structure. So the 19.9 was to cover the additional missing structure. The 6905, 2,000 of that is the mobilization. The remainder of that is the work performed at those listed addresses. So we found an additional, 10 feet of pipe insulation or underneath floor tile. It wasn't specified that there was actually more floor tile or some materials missing completely off of an inspection report.
Thank you for that explanation. It sounds like the breakdown was with Braun Intertech with their communication, and I'm not sure. So the city had a contract with EnviroBait.
Correct.
And Braun Intertech was the entity that did the study or inspections.
Yes.
It sounds like Braun Intertech should be undertaking this amount and not the city of Virginia. So at this point, I would suggest to EnviroBait to have a discussion with Braun Intertech, but I won't be supporting this going forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So I think,
Can I add one more thing?
please do.
As much as I think that it can be frustrating, even on my end, when we're given an inspection report and the amounts are not accurate, to a certain point, that is anticipated because there is pipe insulation that is inside the walls that we can see visually some of it, but then it goes into the ceiling. So I do think that some of it is not necessarily a large error. I do think that this is part of these types of projects, and it was a lot of buildings. It wasn't a couple buildings. It was a large scope of work. So I do think that there were errors in the amounts listed, but to a certain extent, I do think that some of that is just understandable in this line of work.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to support this because I think we have a contract with EnviroBait. We have to honor our contracts. I'm going to vote for that, approving the contract, but at the same time, direct staff to have a meeting with Braun Tech to try to recover the costs associated with that. So, Councilor Freely.
Britt, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought in a previous discussion, it was suggested that Braun was willing to compensate accordingly for the oversight on that second building on that original bid, which resulted in the additional work necessary once that was taken down.
For their invoice, they had to inspect that 124 8th Street South property, and so they did not bill us for that inspection that they completed.
And do you know what that amount was? Or-
I don't.
But it lessens the amount we're
That we
paying.
paid for Braun, correct. Correct.
All right. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. Counselor Beyondich.
you. And I also struggle with change orders. And Britt, could you explain to me, because I think I asked this before, that Kraus Anderson has reviewed the change orders. Do they have anything to do with this? These change, I mean, they review them. We're doing a resolution on them with Kraus Anderson's name.
So what happens, so the IEA is the one that manages the hazardous material removal and abatement. As soon as she's done, Taylor talks to Pat Wertz and lets her know what buildings are done to come down. So that's where they come in together to talk, as Pat's verifying, yep, all the asbestos is out, all the hazardous materials are out, TNT can start. So that's where Kraus Anderson reviews what Taylor is sending.
And IEA reviewed what the contractor did. So I can attest to the hours spent.
Okay,
So multiple levels of communication here, of reviews.
but the city ultimately hired to have this.
Correct. This is outside of Kraus Anderson's contract.
So will Kraus Anderson be receiving a percentage of this change order?
No.
They won't receive any dollar amount. And I think, and I understand what you're saying about unforeseen, but this project especially, we are so tight, and we've gone over, come back, and gone over and come back. So for me, change orders are a huge issue. And I know we have the contingency fund, but I struggle with change orders. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Beyondich. Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. What did our original contract state with, is it IEA? What did our original contract state the city was obligated to pay for?
Yeah, the contract between the city and IEA is for us to have received the information from Brown Intertech and to then take those inspection reports and put them into a specification that could go out for bid to abatement contractors, facilitated the receiving of all the bids, the tabulation, the vetting of the contractors, awarding the contractor, and then facilitating the abatement, the project management, and then completing the final reports for the properties. So ours was not for any of the inspection at all.
So I'm not understanding how then IEA can give us a change order on that. If there was additional work that needed to be done because Braun Intertech made a mistake, I still don't understand how the city has anything to do with that and what our contract stated with IEA to begin with.
Counselor Paulson? Maybe Sherry might have a little bit more information for you. Sherry?
If I'm reading this right, on page 10, it says the original contract sum was $116,600.
Yes, between the city and Envirobate, not IEA. It's confusing because there's a lot of vendors involved.
Then we added an additional $19,900 for the property that was missed, which we approved that. That equaled $136,500. Now we're being asked to pay a contract sum for additional work that on those 6 addresses at 20 supervisor hours at $160 an hour, $3,200. Total of 11 worker hours at $155 an hour, totaling $1,700, and then an additional mobilization fee of $2,000, all of which was not borne or brought on by the city of Virginia. It was brought on by Braun Intertech making a mistake. So the city of Virginia already agreed to pay an additional $19,900. I do not think the city of Virginia should be paying the additional $6,905. And I don't believe that was part of our contract language if they went above and beyond due to a discrepancy or mistake from someone who they had, I don't know, who originally hired Braun. Okay, so then it would be on Braun for that misstep or mistake. And we've already paid out, we already agreed to pay the $19,900 change order. So any additional amount that was borne by IEA should be between IEA and Braun Intertech for the additional hours and mobilization, because that's not the city's fault that Braun made the mistake. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, thank you, Councilor Paulson. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Out of a $30-some million project, $7,000 seems to be something that things happen from time to time, and I think that you've done your diligence. I think everybody has done their best to prevent this from happening, so I will make a motion to approve the authorization of the resolution for 6905.
A motion on the floor to approve by Councilor Johnson. Is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Councilor Freely. Further discussion? I just want to reiterate that we have a contract that we have to abide by, and we have to pay that contract in good faith. If there's money that we have to recover, we have to go after the person who made that mistake, and that's Braun Tech. So that's my opinion. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Beyondich.
So will the city go after Braun to try to recover this money, or does that have to be a separate motion? Yes to which one? Separate motion?
That would be a separate motion.
Thank you.
Has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. Roll call, please, Pam.
Johnson?
Yes.
Aaronzelli? Huffy?
Yes.
Motley?
Yes.
Friedlieb?
Yes.
Paulson?
No.
Beyondich?
No.
Motion passes 5-2. Thank you very much.
And there's another one item, the approval of the final pay estimate number
Well,
3.
I think we're going to look for, before we go to that second motion that Councilor Beyondich was asking for, we have another issue here?
Yep, final pay estimate number 3.
Pardon?
Final pay estimate number 3.
Okay, final pay estimate number 3. Okay.
So moved.
Move to approve by Councilor Freely for final pay estimate number 3 with Environment. What's that?
Support.
And support. Oh, I'm sorry. Motion by Councilor Johnson, supported by Councilor Freely. I apologize. Further discussion on Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so if we could go to page 12 in our packet. I am not understanding, this is why I didn't approve it at the last go-around. On item number 1, it says a contract for $116,600, then a retainage if variable rate on top of that. So we've already paid out 100% of that, is that correct? If you look in that column. So what is the retainage if variable rate, and why is that the amount there? Because there's no percentage given as to how that number is derived or what explains that number. As well as item 2, we approved the change order of $19,900. Now there's a retainage if variable rate of $995, and it looks like we've already paid out 100% or approved to pay out 100%, as well as the third line on extra work and materials. And neither, I don't know if that's a certain percentage, but the percentage would not be straight across the board. So I don't know where these numbers are coming from and why we have to pay an additional.
It's nothing additional at all. The retainage is 5% of the work. They've completed all of the work to date, turned in all their submittals. I've reviewed the submittals, issued the final report. So at this time, paying the full contract sum would be appropriate.
And I think
Retainage was withheld, and then it is now released.
that was my question to you, Britt.
Retainage was, is held until the project's done, until we verify it's done.
Understand
She's, like she stated, it's done, so that would be released now. No more retainage would be held.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
Thank you, Councillor Paulson. It has been moved and supported, correct? Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Any other items for Taylor? Okay, thank you very much.
Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Paulson.
You, was someone going to make a motion to approach Braun Intertech for the discrepancy?
I believe that Councillor Beyondich was prepared to make that motion. Councillor Beyondich?
I would make that motion
Okay, and would you just state the motion for the record, please?
to, how did you word that, Britt, to, is it for Braun?
Do we want to say seek damages, Mr. Lindsay? Okay. A motion to seek damages from our contractor, Braun Intertech, for the overages on the Public Safety Center.
As recommended by our city attorney. Thank you.
That's a motion by Councillor Beyondich. Is there support?
Support.
By Councillor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? I hear Councillor Freely.
Will there be additional fees, legal fees, and/or other fees will incur in pursuit of this? Or is this an internal?
Internal. We'll start with the letter first and see what, maybe invite them to a meeting to talk about it a little bit.
And then I would be interested to know what they've compensated us for to this point and what additionally they may be willing to do beyond that.
I can ask that question, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Freely has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm really struggling with supporting this. I'm concerned that that we are spending too much time and additional fees, even though it's internal now, staff time on a tiny, tiny percentage of the overall project. So I think at this point, I'm not going to support it just because we need to pay it. And based on what it said, it wasn't anything they did necessarily. There's a percentage. So I will not be supporting this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Johnson. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
No.
A roll call, please, Pam.
Barancelli?
Yes.
Huffy?
Aye.
Motley?
Yes.
Friedlieb?
Aye.
Paulson?
Aye.
Beyondich? Johnson?
No.
Motion passes 6-1. Thank you. Next item, please.
Thank you. Item number 4 is Steve Rockwell from Wasabi Community TV regarding the independent contractor agreement for public access television.
Good morning, Mr. Roccola. So, yeah, Mayor, thank
There
you.
we go. Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Council. I understand there's some questions.
Okay, well, there were some questions by some of the council members, so we'll refer to those council members who had those concerns and questions at the last meeting for you to answer at this committee of the whole meeting. So thanks for coming today. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, Steve, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I just had some cleanup language more than anything. And then I see there's some strike-throughs. The monthly payment is now the correct amount, but it's still in here under independent contractors shall also film community meetings, including Public Utilities Commission, local hospital meetings. Local hospital meetings should have been struck out of there because we are no longer VRMC. And then Virginia School Board meetings, it is Rock Ridge, and I believe they are responsible for, I don't know that the city is necessarily responsible for that, or maybe clarify
We don't
that.
film them, but we take them and put them on Channel 5 still.
So I don't know that the city should be paying for that, or that language maybe just taken out of there. And then the other thing is, Steve, the storage of equipment, was a concern regarding having equipment stored in vehicles when it's can blow out. So could we, I guess, I don't know if that language needs to be in there regarding making sure that the equipment isn't stored in cars or whatever.
It's
overnight?
stored in heat-controlled environments, in temperature-controlled environments, however you
So
want to
like
word
if
that.
if you're renting that out, how do you know that?
Well, typically, we're the only ones currently that do any type of outdoor filming in the cold.
Okay,
So the people that have been renting it out haven't been doing it outside.
okay.
If they do, it's during the summer. But
So
there
that
is some
language-
language that we can add to that.
I was just going to say maybe so that we could just guarantee that the public access equipment would be protected no matter who is
Yep.
renting it or when they're renting it. And then the last thing I had was I was wanting to know some reporting requirements, and I don't know if we were going to put that in there. So when your company rents the public access equipment, how does the city verify who it's being rented to, how it's, how long it's being rented? Is the city collecting the fee? And I'm looking more for like liability on the equipment specifically then. So how does the city know when the equipment is rented out?
We typically will give a quarterly report during the cable commission meetings on where it's rented out from where. And then there are fees attached to that, and those are given to the city on a quarterly basis. In the case of this year, some of those payments haven't been received on time, so I've been waiting until I've been getting those, and then now we have a check coming to the city for the rental fees,
Okay,
which
so-
then go back into the equipment fund.
So you've been doing quarterly reporting though, is that correct? And then have we been receiving that?
Steve had just mentioned, he emailed me on Thursday and told me
Yep.
that he was waiting for the cities to give him the information, that he's going to have the report for us very soon for the last 2 quarters.
Okay, and do we need to add that into the contract
That's
language?
probably a great idea to put that in there, that will, just to mention it since
Quarterly.
we do it anyway. Yep.
Yep, we can have it where then they can be added to the cable commission minutes or notes or whatever, and then those, I think, go to the council, correct? As far as I'm aware.
Thank you, and thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. So we're looking for a motion to move the appended contract forward with the recommended changes that were outlined by Councilor Paulson and others, to have that ready for a final consideration and vote at the council meeting next Tuesday.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Councilor Motley. Is there support? By Councilor Freelieb. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
I just have one question. Britt, are you then going to make those changes and send them over to me, or do you guys want me to make the changes and send it over to you?
I think Pam did the last set of changes. Pam, did you want him to do that, or do you want to do that?
Pam?
Either way works for me.
Okay, it works for me too. So, I see a couple of you have been taking notes. Pam, will you just make the changes, send them over? I'll review it and get it signed and sent back.
Will do.
Very good. We'll make the changes, bring it over to you, have it ready for final vote at the city council meeting next Tuesday.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Rockala. Sherry?
Oh, this is just a quick question for Steve, Mr. Rockwell.
Steve?
Sorry.
We got a late question here.
Could I get on the emails when you send those quarterly reports for the finance?
Bob Cohn tends to send those out after the meeting. I believe he's the secretary.
I've
or
never gotten
If
those
it's,
reports.
it might be then Darwin Aller, but I'll make sure you get added to those.
Thank you very much.
I'll make sure the entire council gets added to those as well, if they aren't already.
Awesome.
Cool. Any other questions?
No.
Cool. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Rockala. Next item, please.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is review the proposed tree policy and to schedule additional public input meeting.
I had a chance to go through the tree policy. I did attend the public meeting of the tree board, and it was packed in there. I mean, there wasn't a seat available. Well, maybe that was a different meeting. There were 4 people from the general public was at the tree board meeting and asked some pertinent questions. Tree board answered all the questions. The policy is solid. Moving forward, if you want to send another public hearing, public meeting to ask more people to come. Apparently, some people have had some questions. There was some confusion about about that. I'm fine. We have another public meeting, but only 4 attended the last one. So hopefully we'll get some clarification in that regard, but I think the tree policy is pretty solid. It's probably the most comprehensive policy I've ever seen in the city of Virginia. And then, of course, we have, it's not just a tree policy. That's just one aspect of it. We have a public works department that has statutory requirements, ordinance requirements, and remove trees. And this is a policy. It's not a direct and delegation where the tree board has say what tree gets done and what doesn't. That's not what the policy is for. The policy set a standard for us to follow and to communicate with one another to get that accomplished. So I'm fine with the tree policy the way it is. It's just how we apply it and under what circumstances and how we communicate with the rest of the staff regarding that. So Councilor Motley, who is part of the Park and Rec Department and development of the tree board policy. Councilor Motley.
I would also have to agree with you, Mayor, that I think this is a pretty thorough policy. The Parks and Rec Commission, which is the tree board commission, has worked really hard on this I think we started this almost a year ago, or going to be a year ago. So I'm okay with this moving forward. So I guess that's where I stand. And if the council wants to do another public meeting, I'm for that. So thank you, Mayor.
Well, thank you, Councilor Motley. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have some concerns on the policy. One of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now is trees that are growing in boulevards that are wrecking sidewalks. And this policy allows us to put trees back in boulevards to wreck sidewalks. If we want to be proactive and long-term, we shouldn't be putting trees in boulevards. Even some of the newer places, the sidewalks are already starting to crack where they've done some more work. On South Side, it's terrible. You literally cannot walk on the sidewalk because the trees are uprooting the blocks. I think that the board meeting, the policy open meeting on Wednesday before Christmas was kind of poorly planned timing. So I would like to see us have another public meeting. And I think that the policy and the ordinance don't match well. I think that's something that we really need to look at. Having permits to plant trees, I don't see any fees associated with this. If it's a permit, that means it has to go to planning department. Somebody has to look at it. If I miss the fees, or if they need to be set by ordinance, now we're going back to that thing where we're making people pay to improve on their property, which has been a concern in this room over the last several months. So I think, Mayor, I think you said it, it's the most comprehensive plan around. And for a city of our size, I don't know that this work is appropriate. And I know they've all worked a lot on it. There's been a lot of time put into it, but I'd like to see some more balance between the ordinance and the policy. And honestly, that we shouldn't be planting trees in boulevards. It's going to be in 50 to 75 years, that same problem is going to come up again. Why did we plant here? How is it affecting the infrastructure? How is it affecting the pipes that are going from the city right away into homes and businesses? So I would like to see us look at this further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And in attending the meeting, we got some of those questions were asked and answered. As far as the boulevard trees go, it says they may put them back in the boulevard, but it's at the discretion of the city in which to do so, number one. And number two, there are some streets in town that don't have sidewalks. They just have a boulevard, they don't have sidewalks. So if they take a tree down, that could be at the discretion of our public works to determine through the tree board and others, if this is feasible to redone. And then there was some discussion about what kind of trees would be replanted, and there would be a list of a species of trees that would be replacing those that are taken down that would be less encroaching on the infrastructure that Councilor Johnson alluded to. And then the last part of it is that if a tree is taken down, the option is that the the city will provide a tree to be replanted on someone's property, should they choose to want one on there in that regard. So I think that those questions have been answered satisfactorily for me. And the last part of it is the fee. There is no fee to get a permit. All the permit is doing is to track, those who are replanting. That's all. It's a tracking mechanism, but with no fee and no additional cost to the resident or business owner or the consumer. Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. On page 27, items G and H, discussing what a private tree is, and if the city determines that a private tree is a hazard, they can have an assessment according to item H. Is this something we can do according to our current ordinances on the books, or is private property unless it is, this talks about disease with a shade tree pest or disease. So then the city basically has to go and inspect neighborhoods to see if there's diseased trees, and then the homeowner has to take care of it or will get a special assessment. That's in a policy but not in an ordinance. So how can a policy trump an ordinance?
That's why I have my light on too. I do have some hesitations about that. There's a couple of spots where I do think the ordinance is already clear, and I think there might be some statutory language. That's one of them that we need to review and see if we can actually specially assess. And then also the part where it says that the tree board will be the one that deals with.
Board is the other one I have a problem with.
Yeah, the tree board is the one that deals with all the disputes. We can't legally give that authority to them. It has to go to the council for final review. So the council is set as administrative review board by the charter.
And if you look down on item 5, page 27, construction, where the city construction projects require removal of boulevard trees, the city shall submit notice, including plans, to the tree board for review and discussion. The tree board is a tree board, not a. So I'm not comfortable with a lot of the language in here, to be honest with you. Shall afford the tree board not less than 30 days from the date of the mailing of such notice to dispute the order. So the tree board would have 30 days in which to dispute what the city staff and city employees would be doing for tree and planting?
And I think your points are well taken. I think the purpose of this is to take a look at it, review the policy, discuss it, and schedule another public meeting before we finalize it.
And have we maintained that the tree board is what is the tree board? Do they have bylaws?
They're part of the Park and Rec Commission and are advisory only.
But as a board, the title board means bylaws. So do they have bylaws as a board? A commission is a commission, but a board is a board.
In the city ordinance at 1302, section C, or section E, I'm sorry, which is page 36 of your packet, it does say the board shall choose its own officers, make its own rules and regulations, and I have not seen the bylaws yet. And I certainly can ask them for some, but.
So though, when a board is a board, it's usually an entity like a 50 whatever, with an executive director and a board of directors and I'm kind of curious about how we're getting in the.
You changed the board to a different name, I guess, but Councilor,
Maybe that's the
legal counsel.
simplest answer.
And I think the answer to the question is generally that's true, but not in all cases, and it depends on how formal this board has been in its action.
Because it does state the City Park Board is hereby designated as the tree board, but the park board is not a board, it's a commission. So, but this is in our chapter 13 as an ordinance, so I just feel like they need to match each other. They need to mirror whatever the definition is. It has to be clear, woven throughout any reference that we have. And then in terms of definition of a board, is that a final, you're saying advisory, but I guess I'd just like to see some of that language and maybe understand more before moving forward. I think even with a public hearing, I think we need to figure that out first. Thank you, Mayor.
No, thank you. I think the purpose of the public meeting is to discuss those very same issues. And those are questions that were asked at the public meeting by 3 of the 4 members of the public that were there, and some discussion about the tree, which is now called the tree board, about those very issues. Some changes are recommended, changes forthcoming, but this policy was brought to us for review and discussion to make any recommended changes moving forward, some suggestions that will be placed on the agenda for this public meeting so we can discuss it there. So points are well taken, but I think initiating another public meeting would be beneficial. That was the goal and objective, so we can finalize this thing. But before it went to another public meeting, came back to us for additional review and discussion. So thank you for that information, Councillor Paulson. Anybody else that'd like to address the board? The council? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move to send this back to staff to find those discrepancies, and then when that's done, look at setting an additional public hearing.
Okay, motion by Councillor Johnson. Is there support?
Support.
By Councillor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Here, Councillor Freelieb.
Just given this discussion, and since we're going to be reviewing this on Section 5, which was referred to by Councillor Paulson, where it just says 30 days notice for mailing for such notice to dispute the order, could simply be changed to discuss the order. That's the softening of language, which takes authority away from the board, so to speak, and retains the authority for making decisions to the city itself. Just a suggestion for semantic purposes. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is moved and supported. Further discussion is, if you have any councillor has any other suggestions as they go through the tree policy, write those suggestions down, send them over to our city clerk, Pamela Bean, and or staff will take a look at it, and then we'll have those answers for us, hopefully moving forward. So it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Here, Councillor Motley.
Just for your guys' information, the next Parks and Rec meeting, which includes the tree board, they're the same thing, is going to be Wednesday, the 17th of this month. Thank you, Mayor.
And we may or may not have any information back by then, but maybe you could report that back to the Park and Rec as we're discussing to finalize the street policy and made the recommended changes or the suggestion changes that were offered here today. Has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is item number 6, review the notice of option to exercise right to purchase city property by Joy Global Surface Mining Incorporated.
We'll be adding the tax base. I've had some discussion with Brent about that early on last week with a couple other minor issues. And so looking for council review and action on this purchase. I think we have an agreement with them already for them to purchase that property. Once it's approved, if approved and do so, it'll go on the tax rolls. Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move to direct staff to move forward with the exercise, Joy Global's exercising their right to purchase the property.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson moves to approve. Is there support?
Support.
By Councillor Motley. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Freely.
Just for the sake of discussion, is is Komatsu going to be there from here to eternity? And then we're giving up property that, should they vacate that place, then they would be selling that property that could have been gained for the city of Virginia. But so I guess there could be potential unforeseen future unintended consequences where we lose commercial property, but in the interest of gaining property tax revenue, I'm not going to dispute this moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah, and just a reminder that we do have a contract with them authorizing the exercise, their option under the contract to purchase this property if choose to do so. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. You beat me to it. So the one comment that I was going to make is The option agreement was granted as part of the original lease, land lease. And so according to the provisions of that contract, so long as they're not in default of certain provisions of the leases, we're obligated to transfer the property.
Thank you, Brian. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries.
Item number 7 is review the proposal from LHB for a TIF redevelopment area analysis for the Uptown, Virginia project.
Okay, thank you. And as we're reviewing this and looking through the process, I just want to once again thank the IRRB for their consideration and approval of some additional funding for this project, much needed moving forward as part of their commitment to the Uptown Mall project. We have an obligation to also provide some also in kind or some other financing in order to glean that $500,000 and use it as leverage moving forward. So this is one of the proposals for the TIF district in the redevelopment area of the Uptown Mall. The proposal is to have LHB do this, and it would be for the entire area, including some of the other commercial properties that are in that corridor. Is that correct, Britt?
Correct. Similar to like what we did with our downtown corridor and also with our 8th Street corridor, is we would create a redevelopment area known as the Uptown Virginia corridor, which would go from 12th Avenue to Highway 53, so from Arby's to Village Inn and over to the gas station at the corner of 53 and 12th Avenue.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So LHB, Britt, is that who we've used in the past?
It is the one that they did the miners. We had to do the same thing when we created the 8th Street one, and we used them for the miners project also because of their extensive experience with the TIF redevelopment area.
Okay.
It's different than a regular TIF, like I had mentioned in the previous email. Regular TIFs are usually used for tax relief for a project. This one's a little different because we're only going to commit the increased value. So the current value that they're paying now will still go into the general levy. The increase will go to pay for a subsidy if we so choose to give them one. If we don't choose to give them one, it also, the advantage we had when we had the 8th Street and the downtown ready was when the state released that downtown funding money, it had to be used only in redevelopment areas. So because we had already designated those 2 redevelopment areas, we were able to get grant funding that we never would have gotten if we wouldn't have already identified a redevelopment area. So it's really just advantageous for us to redefine this area because I foresee other expansions happening and other growth going there. And there may be some unique opportunities again that come up with the state or whatever that may allow us to access those funds as well.
So for these investigative services, is that fee recoverable at all by any grant dollars associated with the TIF?
Yes, it is recoverable as part of the cost for the TIFs. We could pay ourselves back with the TIF funding, or we are also going to seek grants to try to assist with this too.
And then I'm not a fan of TIFs.
I know.
However, how you explained it before, and I don't know if you just tried to re-explain it now, was that by creating this district is not going to pull off the tax rolls what they're currently paying in property tax.
Correct.
It would be, so I know we're only looking for $500,000, but to do this, you're designating that whole entire area. So then that would give the city capability to assist in other development projects in that defined area. And then just for my clarification, so when we talk about a TIF district, you basically pull that out of our overall EMV taxation value for the city of Virginia. How we abate that, are there different ways that we can abate that, meaning that they have to pay, say they only need the $500,000 for their project cost. Are you just abating the $500,000? And is it for a specified length of time? And maybe could we kind of just go through
Absolutely.
that? Because
That's
I don't.
100% correct. You absolutely, what you just said was exactly what happens. Their existing value still stays in our estimated market value. It's the increase that gets used to pay us back. So we will.
That increase will be way more.
Yes, the increase that we're going to see in their estimated market value is almost 3 times what they need from us.
So
and that's just for the mall project. I didn't even calculate any other expansions going on there.
Okay.
So any other expansions outside this mall project will just be even more that goes into our levies and our estimated market value. So yes, the 500,000 will be encapsulated as part of this project, but we anticipate it's going to be way more than.
We will be gaining that much more in the property taxation value or the EMV.
Absolutely, absolutely.
At the project, at the end of the project.
At the end of the project.
Okay.
Correct.
And that's where I feel like I'm okay with going forward.
And I don't like TIFs either, so I agree with you 100%. They make me nervous. But in this case, this is the true but for, that if we don't help, it's not going to happen. And that if we do help, it's going to reap benefits for us that we are. It's for everybody in the city. We're going to have a larger tax base. We're going to have more sales tax revenue. We're going to have a lot more stuff happening here.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Paulson. We're looking for a motion. Looking for a motion or additional discussion. Brian?
Thanks, Mayor. I typically try not to be too much of a hindrance. There's a couple of provisions in this contract that I've looked at, and Britt and I have talked about a little bit, that I don't love. Sections 10, 11, and 12 of the contract. 10 and 11 are some damage limitation items that we see being put into a lot of contracts. Item number 12 talks about use of the documents, but doesn't really contemplate that once the documents reach our hands, they become public data. So if the council, if in the action, the council sees it fit, could you authorize me or authorize staff to reach out to LHB to see if we can address these ahead of next week's council meeting?
Thank you, Brian.
I'll move.
I'll move to approve by Councilor Paulson.
I guess the motion would be move approval upon contingency of addressing items 10, 11, and 12, and directing staff to allow them to work with LHB to address those. Do we need that first, to address that first before moving this? Like, let's have the contract changed?
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, and I can't promise you that's going to change all that dramatically. Sometimes firms will approach these as kind of take it or leave it type agreements. But I'd at least like to have the authority to reach out and have the conversation with them to see if we can't improve our position.
Okay, so I think that I would just make the motion to direct our city attorney and city staff to reach out to LHB and address items 10, 11, and 12 as noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. It has been moved. Is there support? Is there support? Oh, I guess we got two supports. Support by Councilor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Motley.
Britt, is this time sensitive or?
It is, because the developer is time sensitive. They want to seriously be starting something in May. So we need to get this report done in this district set before any shovels are in the ground.
Okay, thank you.
And we should have, hopefully have the contact and the discussion on those two items with them and have an answer prior to the next council meeting on Tuesday. So we'll try to expedite this without compromising any issues. Thank you. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 8 is discussed travel request for Christina Nicola and Stephanie Lyson to attend the Upper Great Plains Region 3 Institute in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and this comes from the 12/26 council meeting.
And so thank you. Britt, would you please kind of give us a synopsis and analysis of the pros and cons of what's the benefit, how's the benefit, what are the CE credits, what's available, how is it going to be cost effective, anything that you can add for us as we move forward in trying to make a decision with this. I think if we do approve this, the early bird registration is what, January 9th? If I remember correctly? The 5th? 6th? January 6th, I'm sorry. Thank you. January 6th. Okay, thank you. Britt?
Yeah, Monday. Thank you. Yeah, we do have Christina Nicola here also. We can have her come up and speak a little bit too. But the advantage of this is it's a week-long course that they can get the majority of their continuing education credits done for the requirements that they need. They offer many different types of classes for different topics. I know that in 2024, there's a new energy code coming out, and this is their first chance to go to a training regarding energy code, and it's not available online. So there is some discussions that need to happen with the code officials amongst them. Anything else you want to jump in, Christina, that you have that you might want to say? Okay, come on.
Christina Nicola, our code enforcement official. Welcome.
I'm just going to let you guys, and then.
Okay, any questions from the council moving forward? Questions, concerns, comments? Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. I just had the main thing that I'm struggling with on all travel requests now. I understand it's in the budget, but this just seems like an awful lot of money. And I was hoping that someone could explain about continuing education credits and when the licensure expires versus how much time you have to receive those, and then if we could offset the cost by doing anything virtually, which apparently they don't count for this new energy section that's in the Minnesota code. So my question is, this just seems like an awful lot of money. And have we explored anything above and beyond that energy portion to do virtually to continue your education credits?
Sure. So I'm going to start with the credits that are needed. So these are the required. So this is like bare minimum. For the building official requirements, it's 35 hours required by the state of Minnesota every 2 years for renewal. My position requires that. I also have a residential building inspector certification through the International Code Council, which requires 1.5 CEUs every 3 years, which is very minimal, and a lot of these classes can count towards that. Permit technician certification, which is 1.5 CEUs every 3 years. So if I'm meeting my 35 hours every 2 years for my building official license, those are going to be taken care of, not a problem. The construction codes inspector, same type of situation, 1.5 CEUs every 3 years for permit technician. Residential building inspector through ICC is 1.5 CEUs every 3 years, and certified building official limited, 35 hours required by the state of Minnesota every 2 years for renewal. The rental and housing code inspector, which we recently hired, that has a ICC property maintenance and housing inspector certification, which is 1.5 CEUs every 3 years. That position will have to take an exam through ICC to prove that they meet those and pass that exam. The senior administrative coordinator has an ICC permit technician certification, 1.5 CEUs every 3 years. And what those certifications and licenses ensure that staff has the proper education and experience to do the jobs that they're required to do.
Okay, so for clarification on the, what's the title? One that you just said is 1.5 CEUs. Yep. What is that job title, Britt, on here? I'm sorry, I don't want to say name, I just want to say a title.
Just
which one?
Stephanie's title.
Oh, the construction codes inspector.
Okay, and that requires 1.5 CEUs every 2 years?
Every 3 years.
Every 3 years. So the expense for that position to attend this seminar, is that justified? If there's only 1.5 CEUs needed every 3 years?
For a permit technician and for the residential building inspector. So if you add those two, that would be 3 CEUs every 3 years. So it would be 1.5 for the permit technician, 1.5 for the residential building inspector.
And how many of this, in this position, how many of those licenses are held by that position?
All of them.
Okay, that's what I wasn't understanding.
It's just, and I don't know how much I want to delve into certain other portions. I don't know if she's comfortable with that or that position. But this position, typically when somebody is in this position, they strive to get more and continue their knowledge, continue their education to be the best at that job. It really benefits the city for that type of an employee to be in that position.
So, okay, so that being said, you also touched base on our new rental code inspector. What licensure will be needed, or are we missing? Is it something that we can train the trainer on any of this, or double up on any of that, or is it an online testing?
So that job description requires that they obtain their ICC Property Maintenance and Housing Inspector certification. They can do that online. I believe it's a 2-hour exam. It would be beneficial for that employee and the city for them to do some type of
It's part of their job description, but we did realize that one is online. And I actually just found a study group in Duluth that's going to meet twice in March that's going to help assist get their tests done.
I do want to say International Code Council exams are extremely difficult. If you walk in there, and it's very hard, I will say that.
Okay, so I thank you so much for helping me understand. I felt like this is, and I understand it's in the budget. I just feel like after we've gone through such an ordeal for 2024 budgetary and the levy, that we just really need to be mindful of how we're spending and allocating dollars. And travel was one of those things that people kind of dialed into that we were spending a lot on. And then in the future, as you see things come up that can be virtually obtained, can we focus on that even just as an all department, not just one, not talking about one department, but everybody focus? If there's a virtual option, that virtual option is the one to be taken in light of all that we do have going on with 2024 budget? Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. So, yes, Christina, please.
I completely understand the budget issues, and I'm very understanding of that. I did do a breakdown of all the costs for our department, if I can go through that.
Sure, please
do. We do try to do trainings that are free, and sometimes those are offered. Sometimes they're not online. We do take great care that we don't go a lot of places and don't offer a lot of trainings for our stuff. So we really try it, and this is our one big training a year, and it has been truly beneficial to our department and our positions. And I've been with our department for 12 years, and it's always been an opportunity, and it's allowed positions to grow and to come into the positions. And with newer staff being there, it's important that they attend as well. So it's not the actual registration and education fees, it's more of the travel expense, is that what I'm understanding? Okay. So for the hotel, it's $670 each person. And they gave us a budget rate of $134 a night because we are attending. Otherwise, it would typically be more. The Institute and the conference center that is attached to the hotel. So you don't have to drive, you just walk down each morning. And then in the evenings, which is also beneficial, is they have, each year it's different, but this year specifically, there's a sprinkler demonstration by the National Fire Sprinkler Association in the evening. On one of the days, there's a trade show with vendors that are throughout the area that will showcase their products and provide timely and relevant information. There's a lot of products and applications and codes and laws and legislation that change every year. I wish we could, I don't wish that, but I should say, if we were only able to go one year, it helps every single year. There's always things changing for us to learn about and to understand. I forgot, keep going, okay. So it's $1,340 total for the hotel for 2 individuals. For meals in the evening, it's $360. So our total would be $1,700 in travel expenses. And really, that's all that I believe we would use for the entire year for our department. There really is no other need to travel that I can foresee. So with that, our budget is $4,000 for travel for our department. We would still have a remaining $2,300 left in the travel expense for 2024, which I don't anticipate that we would need.
Thank you. Before we go to Councilor Johnson and over to Councilor Freely, I just want to say that I have the same concerns about the costs associated with this, but the cost-benefit analysis that you describe and what Britt has described, it's a one-time travel opportunity, number one. Number two, it's in the 2024 budget, number two. And number three is that, and I don't want to get into the minutia of it, I'm just going to make this statement, that the fees that we're charging for the rental code enforcement, I know that we're just going to recover our costs associated with that. And part of recovering the costs associated with that rental fee is to make sure that all your people in that department, all workers in that department have the necessary credentials to continue to maintain and enforce not only property preservation maintenance code that was established in 2017 in January, but also the new rental code enforcement policy. So I'm comfortable with sending it to you. I don't like this, the cost either. However, I think that there's a cost benefit with respect to this. So thank you for coming in and taking care of that. So first we'll go to Councilor Johnson and then over to Councilor Freedom. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. And Christina, thank you for coming in and explaining it. I always equate the CEUs to college. What does a college credit cost? And I was just doing some quick looking. The basic master's level, because that's kind of what you're doing is master level work when it comes to saving lives and keeping structures and all that stuff, is $557. So taking the credits that you're going to get and the credits you need, we're paying for a college class of 3 credits, excuse me, and you're getting much more than that. So I think, to agree with the mayor, the cost analysis is definitely right up there where it should be. And with that, to move this along, I will make a motion to approve the travel request as requested. Thank you.
Thank you. A motion by Councilor Johnson to approve the travel request for Christina, Nicola, and Stephanie Lyons to attend this training session. Is there support?
Support for discussion.
Support by Councilor Freely for discussion. Further discussion, Councilor Freely.
So, Christina, I'm a strong advocate for professional development and spent my career in that. And I guess I look at it, it's budgeted, that's understandable. I don't know in the 6 years that I've been here that I've seen any travel requests come across our desk where people are required to be at an institute for more than a night or two. Am I correct in that? And so this is kind of an extensive stay, which is pretty costly to the city. And so I guess from my standpoint, the municipality's responsibility would to, inform you or you inform us of the opportunities that are available, the one-stop shop opportunity, so to speak, provide you with a vehicle to get there as well, pay for the registration fees. But if you're going to be there for that extended period of time, I personally don't think that that's the municipality's responsibility to pay for you to be down there. And so I guess in the future, we should discuss, like, if it's an extension of beyond a night or two, maybe there should be some shared costs on the part of the employees wherever they're attending. That's just a suggestion for the future, because this is a costly venture and it's going to be an every 2-year thing. And I just want to, I think there should be kind of a balance between what the municipality's responsibility is to you and then what the personal responsibility is for your investment in your own personal education. So.
Okay, thank you. And so just to rebut a little bit, for me, if you invest in your employees, you invest in the training and the licensure for it. That's what they're that job for. And so if you're going to apply it to this particular department, then it must be applied to all departments, including the police department, who has maintained their license to practice law enforcement, to the investigators who have homicide experience. So those are 5, 6, sometimes 2 weeks away for travel, et cetera. Fortunately enough that, those were covered under the budget. We're scrutinizing this particular travel expense because of the issue with respect to 2024. And so for me, I have a little bit different perspective. It's professional services. It's there's licensures and that's required for the job. We put that individual in the job in order to accomplish the goals and objectives and run the city of Virginia. I don't think shared costs are an option in that regard. If it's a volunteer class to maybe a career enhancement opportunity where they're going somewhere that's not required and they want to go on a travel request, then maybe that cost should be borne by the individual that's in the department. But in this particular case, it's a required part of their license. And during the budget process, we did talk about we're not going to approve any travel at all, even for the city council, to go to any of these other events that aren't required to get a certified CE credits or to practice law enforcement or to have their licenses for their paramedics. So all that opens a big can of worms in that regard. If we're going to have that discussion, I'm willing to have that discussion moving forward. But for the purpose of this discussion today, I'm going to support this travel request moving forward. Councilor Motley.
Christine, I just want to thank you for coming and kind of explain everything. I do have a question. With going to this training, does this update your license and all credits you need for an additional 3 years? It seems like everything's like every 3 years with your CEUs. How does that work? Will this one big training set you up for 3 additional years?
Depending on when your license expires, everybody's license is given to them at whatever time they pass their exam.
Okay. So hypothetically, for you speaking, would this set you up and you'd be good for 3 years?
2 years for my license through the state of Minnesota. For the International Code Council, then it's every 3 years.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Motley. We have a motion on the floor, moved and supported to approve. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Christina, for bringing it. Thank you, Britt. Thank you, everybody, for all your questions with respect to this. It boded for further discussion and vetting, so thank you for that. Okay, next item.
The next item on the agenda is the contract negotiations with AFSCME. It's a closed session unless somebody else has something prior to this closing.
Okay, should we take a break first, or we should go in closed session after? Let's take a quick break. Thank you. Help yourself to some